What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to ICNV Driversedition, and today we're going to get to another hot topic. The Grand Sport has dominated the news, but just like always, we haven't even gotten a car on the street. We don't even know the pricing behind the car. And already, the comments in the Corvette community are starting to grow to what's next. Yes, what's next? We have a belief that the Grand Sport is not the final chapter. So if it's not the final chapter, what's actually going to be the final boss for the C8 lineup? And because of how everything is starting to unfold and what GM is starting to do, and we have learned that the X in the Corvette lineup now stands for the E all-wheel drive hybrid platform, there's only one logical move to finalize the C8 platform, and that is the C8 Z06X. It's the car that's starting to get a lot of buzz and the community actually wants. So let's talk about it. All right. So this conversation is a conversation I've been having for quite some time. And I say quite some time because if you ever follow the channel, you know probably once every 3-4 months since the Corvette C8 Z06 was released, and we were talking, contemplating, and trying to figure out what the actual C8 ZR1 was going to be. I have been discussing a C8 Z06X, but I did not call it Z06X. I called it Zora or the ZR1. I've been telling you guys the same thing, and the same conversation has actually been these two focal points. Once they reveal the full body of the car, hence the C8 Z06, there is no point in running around with more camouflage C8 Z06s on the street. Typically what we start to see once they reveal the car is more Z06s appear without camo and they start running performance tests. And then the cars that we see still with camo, although people want to say, oh no, it's just the C8 Z06, it actually turned out to be an E-Ray. Then when the E-Ray was revealed and they took the camo off the E-Ray and they started running all these performance tests and you start to see more E-Ray flood the streets in the hands of engineers and so forth, we saw cars in camo. And people kept saying, oh, those were just E-Rays left over that were still in camo that GM was testing. And then we later found out those were C8 ZR1s. And not only were they C8 ZR1s, they was also C8 ZR1Xs. And the same thing happened again. When the C8 ZR1 came out and they removed the camo from the C8 ZR1. And I want you to understand something that's very significant. There has been rumors that this version of the car has been tested as early, or should I say as far back as 2023. And with the C8 Grand Sport being revealed and now the Grand Sport X gracing us with its presence, after the C8 ZR1 and the ZR1X came out, we felt like that was the perfect way to end the Corvette C8 lineup. But then we were given another treat. We were given not only an interior upgrade for the C8 platform, we have now received an engine upgrade for the C8 platform. That is correct. For the 2027 model year, we are getting a new engine in the base C8 and we are getting introduced to the C8 Grand Sport. If you have been hiding under a rock somewhere or just haven't been paying attention to all the news circulating the internet and what GM is doing now. And because the C8 Grand Sport has an addition to the Grand Sport X. Yes, the X, like I stated before, the X stands for the E all-wheel drive hybrid platform. It is replacing the Corvette E-Ray, and we now have a Grand Sport X in our lineup. And the X gets the upgraded electric all-wheel drive system hybrid platform that is currently operating on our C8 ZR1 X. So we bumped up the performance from the E-Ray and we've added it to the Grand Sport with a newer motor to get more power. We're talking about 721 horsepower combined. That is amazing features. But because GM has taken this approach with two vehicles, You hear me again. They've taken this approach with 2 vehicles. You know what is now starting to gain some momentum in the Corvette community. We go back to the conversations I've had long before about a C8 Z06 with an electric all-wheel drive platform. And to me, that is the only way, or it's the best way, you close out the C8 platform. Let's think about this for a second. We've seen the rumors, we've heard some engineers say the Grand Sport would be the best way to close out the C8 lineup. And we've heard some other engineers say what would be the best way to close out the C8 lineup? A Grand Sport? So there has been confidence behind the statement. There has been interest sparked behind the statement. And what we've also learned, if you pay attention to all the information, the videos circulating the C8 lineup since the day it was created, the engineers don't always agree. We have certain products or certain options that they lobby for to make each version of the C8 or each model year of the C8, and some of them just don't make the final cut. So just because the conversation is being had, or because you don't think it's going to happen, doesn't mean there isn't a set of engineers pushing forward, while there may be another set of engineers saying enough is enough. And I get that. It's just like every other job in the real world. We also learned that the C7 platform almost didn't happen because of how General Motors was financially coming out of, or should I say back in 2009, 2010, when they had to get their government assistance and bailout. Prior to that, they were actually working on making the mid-engine layout the C7 platform. So that's why we've seen so much advances in technology, or should I say performance, with the C8 platform, because in theory, they were already working on a small budget in early developmental stages of a mid-engine Corvette before funding shut down the program. And we almost didn't get a Corvette for the 7th generation. So what we're seeing today is countless years of engineering that we never knew was taking place being applied to what has become the most legendary, highest produced mid-engine platform Corvette to hit the market. And I think this is something special. But I don't want to get sidetracked. That's a whole nother conversation to have. So with the C8 introducing the Grand Sport and the Grand Sport X, which is now 721 horsepower, we have a Z06 that is 670 horsepower. And then we jump from the 721 horsepower of the Grand Sport X to 1,064 horsepower. And like the conversations we had before the ZR1 ever came out, what would be an acceptable horsepower output for the ZR1? And many people were expecting, even GM said initially, their goal was to hit the high 8s, low 9s with the ZR1. But once they started the production, they realized they could get a lot more. And they didn't stop. So if you were anticipating making a high 800 horsepower car or a low 900 horsepower car, there is a gap in the lineup that can be filled. And if we take the same electric all-wheel drive system from the ZR1, yes, the 186 horsepower output of that electric motor, and we add it to the 670, we now have 856 horsepower that can be achieved by a Z06X. That would fit perfectly in that gap or that middle range that we are missing from the 721 to the 1,064 horsepower. So do I believe it's an option? Do I believe this will be the final boss? This will be the way GM closes out the C8 platform? Well, it only makes sense. And I know a lot of people are going to say we don't see any Z06X's testing running around right now. You haven't seen the current cars that have been released thus far running around being tested, Because if you actually listen to the engineers and when they come out and discuss how long they've been working on these cars, yes, the Z06 was running back with the C7 platform before they even released the ZR1. We've seen the E-Ray and the ZR1X being tested side by side with the Z06 in camo. But we just didn't know it was there. GM did, and they hid it right in front of you. We didn't know the ZR1 was being tested alongside the Z06. So, in essence, the cars could have been running around in your face for the longest. It doesn't mean that all tests have to happen today. That's one thing that was also released in conversations with engineers, retired engineers, and former engineers, is that a lot of the testing they do it sometimes with no results ever coming to actual meeting production. And some tests they do actually go further along and become a produced vehicle we see on the street. So, like I was saying before, there was rumors of a Z06 electric all-wheel drive system car being tested back in 2023. And a lot of people started to believe once the ZR1 came out, twin turboed, and then the ZR1X came out, twin turboed, that it was early developmental tests for the ZR1X. And that might actually be true. But at the same time, they've already done testing on it. And would it be so crazy to take a step back and take some of that information, which I say the work that's already been done, focus on tweaking it and making it a final project and bringing it out to the platform? Or should I say to the lineup in the community? At this point in time, there are a lot of people that are actually interested in a Z06X because they feel like obtaining a ZR1 or a ZR1X is just not going to be feasible. And truthfully, if you get your hands on a Z06X, based off everything we've seen thus far, this car should put up numbers very close to a ZR1, which is a dream for a lot of people that probably will never happen. So if you can now get an electrified Z06, and we're going to call it the Z06X, and it could come out and put down the same numbers as a Corvette C8 ZR1, the ZR1 starts out somewhere around $185,000, $200,000, and you now have a car that you can put in the middle of that. I mean, come on now. What we have realized and what we have experienced and what we have seen is there is a small market for a $160,000 to a $200,000 C8 Corvette. We've seen people pay that type of money for a C8 Z06 with a lot of options and equipment. So I think if you ask me, if they do bring a C8 Z06X to the market space, it may get the same treatment as a C8 ZR1X, meaning they only offer it in maybe a 1LT, or should I say 1LZ, and a 3LZ platform. To me, there's no need to make the two, or you just stick it to the three. You make the car a 3LZ option only. You throw in an extra $20,000, $25,000 for the electric all-wheel drive high platform, which now bumps this car from $130,000 to a $150,000, maybe $160,000 starting point price tag. And you already getting a nicely equipped vehicle because it's a 3LZ. And when you add on the rest of the options, there you go. It falls right in line up with an affordable production model that doesn't get too outrageous compared to a C8 ZR1. So overall, the Z06X does logically make sense. And a lot of people, a lot of movement, the Corvette community is starting to spark up some buzz around this topic. And I actually believe it's the perfect way to end the C8 platform run. Another reason why I think we may actually see this car is because rumors are starting to finally circle around, coming out saying that 2030 or 2029 may be the actual last model year of production for the Corvette C8 lineup. And you have to ask yourself, it is 2026, although we're about to start production for 2027. Do we believe the C8 Grand Sport is a big enough draw to carry the C8 platform lineup for the next 4 years with new vehicle releases? I just don't think it will. Even if we end up going to 2029, 3 years with no new entry to the platform is a long time or a long run to have on a car, a performance car that has been around since 2020. So I think it only makes logical sense if GM is going to stretch this lineup out to 2029 or 2030, we have to see one more car. And like the North American president said, when they brought out the ZR1 and the ZR1X, we have more legs. I don't think legs was referring to the Grand Sport X only. That means there should be at least another version of a C8 coming your way. If you think I'm right, let me know in the comments below. If you would like to see a C8 Z06X, let me know in the comments below. If you don't think we need another hybrid option vehicle to the lineup, drop that information in the comments below. At the end of the day, let's have a conversation. As always, ICNV Driver's Edition. Go ahead, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, join the ICNV Driver's Edition community. If you like the content that just came your way or you want to participate in more conversations, go ahead, join the community, hit the subscribe button, lock into the channel, and let's talk. But don't forget, we were all made in this image and given dominion over the world, which means we weren't just meant to be. So chase your dreams, build your visions, never ever give up, and embrace your own identity. It is okay to be unique. We were all given unique gifts to help us become the best versions of us that we can possibly be. So step into your calling, become the blessing to the world that you were meant to be. Just remember to stay humble, stay focused, and stay blessed. And I'll see you in these streets. Peace.